Do you know that many Africans today who call themselves Christians do not know the real story of how Christianity arrived in Africa? Many of them simply think that the people who brought Christianity to them brought it with love and kindness, without knowing the devastation and destruction that came with the European Christianity. Now, it is important to understand that Christianity had already been practiced in Africa long before Europeans ever set foot here.
Hear that? Christianity was in Africa before Europe. Yeah, like Ethiopia. Go ahead, keep going, brother.
The Ethiopian Bible is older than the King James
And thank you. That's exactly right.
The argument that colonialism brought Christianity to Africa is completely wrong.
Why is it completely wrong?
Because Christianity was already in Africa before Europe.
Christianity was in Africa before Europe. Everybody hear that?
And many historians even believe that it spread from Africa into parts of Europe. This early African Christianity was peaceful, it was not enforced, and it did not erase other people's cultures. Instead, it coexisted with local traditions, languages, and identity. So Christianity itself is not the problem. The problem is that the version of Christianity that the Europeans brought back to Africa in the 15th century was not a Christianity that had love or choice. It arrived with slave ships, chains, deception, and violence. It arrived hand in hand with colonization and had a huge impact on the slave trade. It was used not just as a religion, but as a tool of control. Let's listen to what Desmond Tutu had to say about Christianity in Africa. When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, "Let us pray." We closed our eyes, and when we opened them, we had the Bible and they had the land. Before colonization, Africa was not spiritually empty, and Africa was not waiting to be saved by God. Africa already had a deep structured belief system, moral codes, and spiritual traditions that govern different tribes and kingdoms in Africa. Across the continent, different people worshipped differently, but the foundation was still the same. We all had respect for nature and believed that our ancestors were always dwelling amongst us. The different gods that the African people served varied amongst tribes. In the Yoruba kingdom, there was Ogun, Shango, and Obatola. These forces represented justice, creation, discipline, and order. Among the Igbo people, there was Chukwu, who was known as the supreme source, alongside other ancestral spirits that enforced morality. In places like Kenya, many communities worshipped Ngai, the creator connected to land and nature. In Central Africa, especially in Congo, they worshipped Nzambi Mungu, which represented divine order and life itself. In Ghana, it was Inyame, the supreme sky god, alongside other spiritual figures that were woven into daily life. The respect and reverence for these African gods allowed a sense of morality amongst the African people, and they regulated the behavior of different people in their kingdoms. They discouraged theft, deception, and dishonor. In fact, many African societies thrived while practicing African traditional religion because Africans believed they were one with nature. Spirituality was deeply tied to medicine, science, and the environment. This allowed Africans to develop medical practices long before European science reached the continent. For example, among the Kisi people of Kenya, there is documented evidence of successful brain surgeries. These were performed to treat head injuries, skull fractures, and chronic conditions. It was recorded that these brain surgeries had a survival rate of 96%, which was even higher than the survival rate in Europe at that time. Across Africa, traditional healers were able to heal broken bones with wet mud and herbal treatments. Africans also possessed advanced environmental knowledge. They were able to read wind patterns, animal behavior, clouds, and the stars, and they could accurately predict when the rain would fall and when the seasons would change. Many communities were even believed to have influence on the rain. They could stop the rain from falling and they could cause the rain to fall. But a lot of this knowledge did not disappear naturally. They were deliberately destroyed when the Europeans arrived with their own version of Christianity. These missionaries did not just come to preach. They captured and sold Africans into slavery, they burned down shrines, they labeled African gods as devils, and they called African priests and babalawos demons. African traditional religion was criminalized. A worship that had existed for centuries and even thousands of years was suddenly declared illegal, evil, and uncivilized. And after destroying these sacred places, they still took African sculptures, marks, and religious artifacts, some of which represented African gods. These items were looted and shipped to Europe. Until this day, some of these artifacts sit in European museums labeled as art or history. And despite decades of pleas for the return of these artifacts back to Africa, many of them are still held by the same institutions that once condemned them. So the African spirituality that is demonized at home in Africa is preserved, displayed, and profited from in Europe. It should be noted that not every Christian missionary was personally involved in the violence and physical abuse of Africans at that time. However, these actions were carried out under the Christian umbrella. That is why major Christian institutions have publicly admitted fault. Pope John Paul II, speaking on behalf of the Catholic Church, issued multiple apologies for the involvement of the Catholic Church in slavery and colonial abuses. The Church of England also formally apologized for its role in the transatlantic slave trade. Baptist churches, including the Southern Baptist Convention, have likewise acknowledged and apologized for how Christianity was used to support slavery. These apologies matter because they confirm one thing: Christianity was a part of how slavery was justified and organized. The destruction of African traditional religion still has a long-lasting effect till today. In places like Nigeria, many Christians find it difficult, even frightening, to live near people who still practice African spirituality. Not because those traditions are violent or destructive, but because European Christianity has trained Africans to fear their own heritage. And here is the irony: no indigenous African religion has caused even a fraction of the destruction that was carried out under European Christianity. Yet African religions are the ones labeled demonic. Now let's talk about hypocrisy. The same Europeans who preached Christianity enslaved Africans. Africans were promised heaven after death, while Europeans built heaven on earth using African labor. Modern African Christianity also runs often on fear. This fear and desperation also led to a case in Ghana where a self-proclaimed preacher, commonly known as Noah Ebo, claimed that God had revealed to him that a massive flood would destroy the country and that the world would end on a specific date of December 31st, 2025.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Ebo Jesus. You can call me Ebo Noah. Please, I beg, on my knees, I said 25th December is going to rain. It's going to rain heavily. And we are going to stay in this boat for 3 years. For 3 years. Until the dove comes and tell us we have reached the promised land.
He told his followers that the only way to be saved was to gather at a location where he was constructing an ark, and shockingly, thousands of people believed him. They sold belongings, abandoned their work, and showed up in fear, genuinely convinced that they were following God's instruction. When the date came, nothing happened. But here is the most disturbing part. This will not be the last time that such thing is happening. There will always be another fake prophecy, fake miracle, and fake promise. And because of the desperation and fear that Christianity has placed on African Christians, many of them will still fall for such tricks. Please keep in mind that this video is not about rejecting Christianity, and it is also not about telling Africans what to believe. It's strictly about understanding our history. It's understanding how European Christianity was used as a tool to reshape African identity, erase our traditions, and maintain control even till this day. Because when a people are disconnected from their spirituality, their history, and their ancestors, they become easier to dominate, easier to manipulate, and easier to exploit. What was done to Africa was not just physical, it was psychological. And psychological chains are far more powerful than physical ones because you don't even realize you are wearing them. If you enjoyed this video or learned something from the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be dropping more contents like this very soon. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.